As I indicated in my opening statement, I wanted to talk about the death of Mr. Epstein. Do you concur with the opinion that it was a suicide?
That was the finding of the coroner, sir.
Okay. Do you have any evidence to suggest otherwise?
I do not.
How could this have happened?
Unfortunately, sir, the death and the whole situation is still under the investigation of the FBI and the Inspector General's office, and I'm really not at liberty to discuss specifics of this case. I can discuss issues around institutional operations, but I can't specifically talk about that particular issue.
Okay. With a case this high profile, there's got to be either major malfunction of the system or a criminal enterprise at foot to allow this to happen. So are you looking at both? Is the FBI looking at both?
If the FBI is involved, then they are looking at criminal enterprise, yes.
Do we have people in custody today of this high-profile nature? Have we done anything to adjust since Mr. Epstein's death?
Sir, we take every inmate's life very seriously in the Bureau of Prisons. A high-profile inmate is no more important or significant in terms of our operations than just the average inmate that comes our way.
When I mean high-profile, somebody's on a suicide watch.
I would like to explain our suicide watch system, if I may. I can't talk specifically about Epstein, but we have different tiers of response if we identify an inmate who appears to be having suicidal thinking. And I came into the Bureau as a psychologist. I worked with lots of suicidal inmates. I was warden in our psychiatric facility in Butner, and I know how difficult it is to always be able to predict who is suicidal and who is not. But once an inmate is identified as potentially suicidal, we have a suicide watch operation that we can place them in. It's a very stark, very difficult setting where everything is stripped from the room except a mattress. They get a coarse gown-like to wear that cannot be twisted in any way that they could hang themselves from it. They have one mattress and one blanket, and they are watched constantly. There's nothing else in that room.
Was Mr. Epstein on suicide watch?
Yes, he was. However, the average time on suicide watch is only about 24 hours because it is such a stark and actually depressing situation. We then can move them to another tier of observation, which is called psychological observation.
Did that happen in this case?
I can't speak specifically, but I am sharing this with you so that you understand our procedure, sir. They then can move to another tier, which is psychological observation, where they get their clothes back. They're in a more normalized setting. They are watched and scrutinized every moment of the day, but that is a much more normal environment.
Do they have roommates?
I'm sorry, sir?
Do they have roommates?
No, they do not when they're on psychological observation because they're being watched continuously.
Did Mr. Epstein have a roommate when he allegedly committed suicide?
No, he did not.
Okay. Good.
They move into psychological observation. Psychologists see them routinely, interview them repeatedly, and once it's determined that the threat of suicide seems to have passed, then that inmate can be returned back to open population.
Well, clearly it didn't work here, so we await the report because all the victims of Mr. Epstein have to have their heart ripped out, else they'll never see justice.
Dr. Sawyer, can you think of any other incidents in the history of the BOP that have caused as much crisis for public trust for your institution as Epstein's death?
I can only speak for since 1976 when I joined the Bureau. I don't know prior to that, but I would say it's probably gotten the most public attention.
There are lots of taxpayers and citizens who've never thought about the BOP, and you have lots of good, patriotic, hardworking folks there. I get that. But in terms of a crisis of public trust in general, but also in terms of your workforce, this death happened in the middle of August, early August. It's Thanksgiving, and you're here to testify today, and you say you're not allowed to speak about this incident. I think that's crazy. Can you distinguish among types of investigations, at least for us? Because I'm aware of at least 3 Epstein investigations. You got a whole bunch of women who were raped by this guy. This is a sex trafficking ring in the United States. This guy had evidence. He's got co-conspirators, and there are victims out there who want to know where the evidence has gone. Can you tell us a little bit more about the different investigations? I understand there's at least one that you're directed by Main Justice not to speak about, but there are at least 3 investigations. Can you unpack them, please?
There are 2 investigations that are ongoing. One is the FBI's investigation, and the other is the Inspector General's investigation.
Both inside BOP, but there's a third one outside, which is why Epstein was in your institution to begin with.
Yeah, and that, sir, is completely out of my
I get that. There's a lot here where DOJ has failed. There's a lot here that BOP has failed. Let's just be clear so we have a level set for everybody in this room. You're in your job because of this crisis, right? You come here today and you say you can't testify about it, but the reason you're director now is because the last guy got fired, right?
Senator, I can't tell you what I don't know. I have received no information from the FBI investigation yet, nor no information from the Inspector General. Once those entities go into one of our facilities, we are forbidden from talking to anybody in the institution. We can send in a team and look at wherever there might have been a security flaw or something, but we are not allowed to talk to anybody in our institutions about anything that happened over the Epstein.
With all due respect, you still have an obligation to speak to the girls who were raped by this guy today. You may not have to speak about every particular of the guards that were arrested last night, but the fact that there is an ongoing attempt by the United States government to find out if there's still any evidence about the co-conspirators, you do have an obligation to speak to those girls who were raped today. You may not speak about the specifics of the charges against those two guards this morning who were taken into custody, but more broadly, you should be able to unpack, have we changed any processes about how cases like this are handled? It's been more than 90 days, and you said, I think your quote was, we treat every inmate the same. We believe in America that every individual has equal dignity, but not every inmate has equal value for future criminal investigations. Jeffrey Epstein was still to testify in a case. Somebody who's already been convicted, who may be on suicide watch, there are lots of good reasons to not want that guy to be able to kill himself. This is different, because it isn't just about the individual inmate who might kill themselves. It's about the fact that that bastard wasn't able to testify against his other co-conspirators. So it is wrong as a management matter for you to say we treat everybody the same. We should be treating people who are yet to testify against other felons, against other rapists. They have a lot more priority for your institution, don't they?
Senator, pretty much all of our inmates that are in any of our jail facilities are pretrial. They're still yet to testify, to be involved, to share information on other cases. I don't know what evidence you're asking of me. If you're saying, was there any evidence in his room, in his possession at the time?
No,
that was all confiscated by the FBI.
In his brain and in the cameras and in the tapes that the American public well understands appear to not be urgent enough for the Department of Justice.
No, it's very urgent for the Department of Justice, and it's all been confiscated by the FBI, and it's all part of their investigation. That's why none of that is shared with the Director of the Bureau of Prisons or anyone in the Bureau until the investigations are completed. Once those are completed, I'd be very happy to come up here and talk with any one of you that want to hear everything about we glean from those investigations. But until I have that information, there's nothing I can tell you. If I don't have the information, I cannot share anything with you.
Then how widespread is the problem of sleeping on the job? There are lots of people in the public who think this seems a very convenient excuse. And so tell us, is it a systemic problem? Do we have a lot of people who sleep on the job when they're supposed to be guarding federal inmates?
We have a few, sir, and we have been monitoring the cameras that are existing in every one of our institutions to determine how well and how effectively our inmates are, our staff members are doing their rounds and counts in the institutions. We have found a couple of other instances, and we have immediately referred those to the Inspector General's office, and I'm encouraging that if people just chose not to do their job, we're hoping the U.S. Attorney's Office will pick up those cases and prosecute them for us, because we don't want those people in the Bureau of Prisons. They are dangerous to everybody, the inmates and the staff. And so we are zealously going about trying to determine which of our employees are good employees and who do their job, and that is the vast majority of the prison staff. But we do have some, I know, out there who obviously choose not to follow policy, choose not to do their job, and we want them gone. I do not want them in our institutions, and I am exploring those very, very carefully to identify them and get them out of our system. Now, if it's a training problem and they didn't know what they were supposed to do, that's our problem. That's management's problem. We have to do a better job training our staff. But if someone is well-trained, well-experienced, and chooses not to do their job, we want them gone. I assure you of that.
I'm at time, so I'll just give you a preview of something I'm going to ask you for the record after the event. You made a really important statement about drone drops of different kinds of contraband into your institutions. That's obviously a new and hard problem. That's a problem against which we have to play defense, but there's also new opportunities for offense. And so what your long-term strategy is inside the institution about cameras is something that I think a lot of us would like to hear more, and I'll send you a letter with some questions. Because Epstein's hallway should have still been monitored by cameras even if his guards were asleep, and we don't have information about whether or not there were adequate cameras there. And so I think a lot of us would like to understand where technology dollars are going.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Blumenthal's next, but just follow up on this. Will there be an IG report regarding what happened?
There should be. Usually after the Inspector General's office investigates, they do come out with a report.
If people are pending criminal charges, we're not going to interfere in their cases, but if there's an IG report, I promise you we'll get fully briefed by the committee here.
How can I put this? Christmas ornaments, drywall, and Jerry Epstein. Name 3 things that don't hang themselves. That's what the American people think. That's what the American people think. And they deserve some answers. And I know that you're not in charge of these investigations,
Yes, sir.
but you talk to the people who are. And I need you to take a very respectful message today. Tell the American people what happened. And don't rush it so that they don't do a thorough investigation. But you and I both know they can make this a top priority and get it done more quickly than they normally would.
And I felt like I had to ask, though, and I feel like I have to share it with you guys now. And it is disturbing, and I want to warn you, but I feel it's my responsibility to tell you guys because it is the truth. And I believe if we all knew this, we would dedicate much more of ourselves to stopping it. So when I asked what child pornography entailed, yes, it's nude images of boys and girls under the age of 18. But now, because of high-speed internet, it's also videos very prominently. And videos of kids, and by kids I mean prepubescent, visibly prepubescent. And they make the distinction because of the internet and there's so much content, these pedophiles are desensitized. Because of that, the kids are getting younger and the content is getting that much more devastating. So when this law enforcement officer told me this, I asked him how young are the young kids he's seeing, and he told me infants. And I have a 6-month-old baby. So I said, what does that mean? You know, like what does an infant mean? And he said, with the umbilical cord still attached. I know it's so devastating to hear this, and I'm really sorry to share this, but I'm grateful that you guys are listening because this is actually happening, and it's important that we know this and that it resonates with us so that we think about this in our days and in our personal life.